In this episode of the Project Management Podcast, we discuss how NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and other top federally funded research and development centers prioritize and manage their annual plan and portfolios.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com. I'm Cornelius Fichtner. We are coming to you live from the stimulating 2017 PMI Global Conference in Chicago, where I'm currently sitting in a completely empty presentation room. It's room W180, and the presenter who will be speaking here in about 90 minutes is Daryl Hahn, sitting with me here. Hello, Daryl.
To a completely empty room.
We don't know that. Oh, somebody just walked in the door, so we have at least one person who will be listening to you, Daryl. How are you enjoying the conference so far?
Pretty well. We didn't get a chance to see a whole lot of presentations yet. We flew in from California last night, and we're actually flying out tonight right after this one. It's a Halloween weekend, so I got to get back to the kids so we can go trick-or-treating.
That's also important. Is this your first conference?
No. I've been to a couple of these, been to the Gartner ones, been to a bunch of the other different conferences as well. We went to the PMI one last year.
Yeah. And when you compare the PMI to the others, I mean, this is specifically for project managers. Mm-hmm. Do you feel more at home here as a project manager, program manager, than you feel at the others?
I think that may be a safe bet to say. You know, it's certainly more specialized to specifically project management stuff that people are interested in that expertise. So there's usually a bit more specifics to do here than there are at some of the other ones, maybe.
Yeah. What prompted you to talk about and to speak about the topic of the methods and madness to strategic planning? It doesn't sound like the sexiest of topics.
No, well, one of the things that we do at JPL is we chair the project management working group session of all the FFRDCs. So FFRDC is a federally funded research and development facility. We are a full NASA center, and there are a bunch of other NASA centers, Ames, Kennedy, a bunch of other ones. But we sit down with those folks on a continuing basis, and for lack of a better phrase, we share our pain. Hey, what are the issues that you guys are having today? How do you guys figure out how to track resources better than anybody else? What are you guys doing when your annual plan blows up? And what are the sort of methods that you guys employ to get back on track? Those types of things. Mm-hmm. So we found a lot of value in collaborating with some of the other FFRDCs, and we decided that each of the FFRDCs do things a little bit differently, but since they're all FFRDCs, they do things kind of the same way as well. So we decided to sit down and work with some of the other guys and other teams and come up with basically a consolidated version of how everybody does that, and then be able to share that with everybody else. Mm-hmm. One of the key things that we do as an FFRDC is education and outreach is very important to NASA and all the other NASA centers. So we want to make sure that we're trying to push out as much information as we can.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a step back. Everybody has heard about NASA and the JPL, but not everybody may be completely familiar with what you're doing. Give us sort of the 10,000-foot overview. What does JPL do?
JPL's primary focus is unmanned deep space. So satellites, rovers, those types of things where you don't put a person on it. It's you put your project together, for lack of a better phrase, and you send it away realistically forever. Once it physically leaves the planet, you can't get to it anymore and do stuff with it. So a lot of the project management sort of characteristics that people are really relying on need to be super fine-tuned, because it's not like we can just go redo something after our product hits the market, for lack of a better phrase. Once it's gone, it's gone. So we have to really refine a bunch of those things.
Yeah.
And, like I said, unmanned deep space. So, all the Mars rovers, the not Mars Exploration Rover. Well, that is one. As the rover, the MSL, the Mars Science Lab, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. We have a couple of Earth orbiting satellites as well that do weather and those kinds of things. But for the most part, it's unmanned deep space.
Okay. And you are in the PMO at JPL, right? What is your role in the PMO?
I run the project management office for the Office of the CIO, so it's really the IT PMO. Mm-hmm. The flight project side has another sort of PMO that's called the Project Support Office. So the Project Support Office runs basically PMO-type stuff for the flight projects. They handle the reviews. You get called in front of Congress. That's those guys to help you get through that sort of thing. I need to justify another, $200 million on my project. That's those guys. I get the IT stuff. So JPL is basically a is a matrix organization where there's flight projects and then there's a line organization. The only reason JPL is there is for the missions, the flight side. Mm-hmm. All the line organizations support the flight side. So my PMO does everything for the line organizations, specifically in the IT area.
Okay, and you mentioned that you work with other PMOs from other federal agencies, right? And how do you work together with them?
We have at least quarterly either virtual sessions or we actually get together all. All of the FFRDCs have a quarterly CIO gathering. So all of the CIOs tend to gather at one of the different centers, whether it's APL, Applied Physics Lab, or MIT, or Aerospace, RAND, any of those other places. The CIOs gather, and we try and piggyback onto that because we know the relevant people are going to be available or at those sessions. So we either try and visit at the same time and either do a day before or a day after, and then or just a virtual session. And that happens at least once every quarter. Every month we try and get together for calls. Just to share the pain and what are you guys doing? You learn anything new? Anybody see any presentations that they're enjoying? What did you learn from that? Those kinds of things.
What is on your annual plan?
We've got all kinds of stuff on our annual plan. Specifically, what I'm going to talk about today is the IT annual plan. Obviously, so it's things like networking. It's things like cybersecurity enhancements. It's things like that the business needs that IT can help with. So we need to improve our hiring process. Well, what does that mean? Once we define that, we extract the IT components out of that, and we decide whether or not there are valuable IT projects that we can put on our annual plan that will help support the business's needs.
That actually brings up a very good point. We're not just talking about space projects here that are on your annual plan. We're talking about everything, right? Everything and anything that you may need to do as an organization is on your annual plan.
From an IT perspective, we have several plans. Yes, the one that I get to play with on a continuing basis is the IT annual plan. So yeah.
Okay, good. And you follow a process in order to develop and maintain this annual plan. And from what I can tell, just on a very high level, it's 6 steps. It starts with the strategic plan, goes over to call for proposals, then you score and prioritize, you consolidate, you retreat, and at the end of this comes out your annual plan. Before we jump into this seems to be like an annual process that you do again and again, but some of your projects, they're decades in preparation. Is there a different planning process for those? Or?
No. Most of the IT work that we do, for the most part, extends to maybe 3 years for an IT project. Some of the flight projects certainly go out, a decade or so. Voyager, which launched in the 60s, is still flying around out there right now. But from an IT perspective, those projects that roll over from year to year, we classify them as rollover work. And one of the things that when rollover work makes it onto our plan, one of the things that we have a tendency to do on a rather detailed level, almost every quarter, is reevaluate all of the rollover work that we're doing. Since we're not a for-profit organization, we want to make sure that we're spending our money on the right spots, on the right places that are still going to provide value. And just because we sunk, $1 million into some new application, and we've only got a month and a half left on it, but it's still going to cost another $100,000, we try not to throw the good money after bad just to finish the project. So on a continuing basis, these multi-year efforts, we are always reevaluating them. Do we still need this? Do we want to do this? And things come on and pop off the plan, quite often.
And the one thing for our listeners that you cannot see is the fact that Daryl's boss is sitting right next to us, and he's nodding vigorously in regards to what Daryl is saying here. Okay, so it all begins with the strategic plan. Walk us through this. How is it developed?
So the best way to talk about it is what goes into our original strategic plan are the strategic business goals and then the IT goals. So the business goals are the things that the business unit wants to do, flight project wants to get done. or the lab as a whole needs to get done. Improve the hiring process. Come up with a better way to, from an IT standpoint, I don't know, take money at the cafeterias, something like that. And then we've got your IT strategic goals, which are the things that are IT-led initiatives that can help the flight projects or the lab in general achieve their goals. So as an example, we've got a couple of projects coming up that are going to be needing to get massive throughput for data. JPL has 4 10 gig connections to the internet right now. So our connection out to the internet is at most 40 gigs a second as a throughput. We've got new flight projects that are coming up that are going to download trillions and trillions and trillions of data points. So we need to seriously expand that. So one of the flight project goals is, collaborate better with our partners and those kinds of things. And one of the IT goals that come out of that is we need to increase the network throughput. And we can tether that IT goal to the strategic goal. So the flight projects look at our strategic IT plan, and we don't have to justify things to them. We can say, look, we could get by without expanding our network connections, but you guys need it from a flight project standpoint. So we're going to take the energy, we're going to take the effort, we're going to take the time and resources, put into expanding the network because it's something that you guys need. So the strategic plan is a mesh of what the business needs and what IT needs, and hopefully as integrated as possible, so everything that really needs to get done will get on the plan and get marked as important.
Okay. Who's involved in developing the plan?
It's typically architecture, the engineering groups, the executive leadership of the CIO, the project management organizations, there's risk management, there's operations, there's a whole mess of people that get into the soup. That say, hey, I have an initiative, I have an important care about, hey, I have a big ask, let's try and put everything, in perspective.
And this happens quarterly as well?
No, it's an annual plan, so what we end up doing around July 4th, around the holiday or so, is when we really start it for the next year, because our fiscal year starts in October. So we get July, April, May, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, and September. So we get those 3 months at the end there to be able to have our annual plan and push it out.
Okay. Next step after the strategic plan is call for proposals.
Yeah, what JPL does is we're really big on taking other people's ideas and information. I've spent the last 15 years of my career at JPL, which means I've been getting very comfortable for the last 15 years being the dumbest guy in the room. So what that really means is no matter how much you think you know about whatever you're talking about or what your area of expertise is, in an organization like ours, there's probably somebody sitting right next to you who's probably better at it than you. And if that guy's got a good idea, let's flush it out. So what the call for proposals is after we have the strategic plan, we make that available to all the relevant parties. And all those people take a look at it. They share it with their organizations if they need to. And the goal of the strategic plan is these are the things that the lab needs to get done. Do you have some zany idea, some wacky project, whatever, that can help us accomplish those goals? So they fill out some list that we put out somewhere, relevant project information, what's the project going to be called, in theory, how much does it cost, who are the stakeholders, what's your basic description of it, and then we put them all together in a room and we evaluate them. And JPL's got something that we try and do because we get some of these zany ideas and they're engineers. They're really good at math and physics and those kinds of things, but sometimes some of the social skills are not quite there to explain themselves, and they can do it in a really detailed manner. But when you're trying to sell something, it's not as digestible. So what we try and do is we contact these folks and go, you had an idea for something, sounds really great. We need some more information on it. So we get those people, we kind of put them in a room sometimes with stakeholders and folks that can supply them with seed funding for these activities. And we say, just talk about it. Give me some more information. What's going on with your idea? And we get a bunch on an annual basis of these sort of wacky projects that we didn't think would accomplish things on our annual plan that do, because we took the time to get more information out of them. We also get a bunch of things that have nothing to do with the annual plan, and the specific initiatives on the annual plan, but they're still really great ideas after we talk to these people. So then we put those aside. They don't necessarily make it on the annual plan this year, but maybe we form goals around them for next year, and then we keep moving those things out.
All right, so we've done the strategic plan. We have the call for the wacky proposals, as you call them. And now, next step, score and prioritize.
Yeah, so what this is we take a draft look at the plan, and we say, look, we've got all these items on the list. What's the best way to go about prioritizing what we're doing with these? And we've got when you think about it, I want to say it's a fairly sophisticated, because we're NES and JPL, but when you break it down to the math, it's fairly remedial weighting and categorizing of all the projects. All of our projects get filtered into a couple of different bins. It's either a compliance project, which is something we have to do. And as an FFRDC, we have to do a bunch of stuff because we have government requirements and mandates. We've got vision projects, which are things that the lab has a specific vision, as an example of where they want to be in the year 2025. So what are the projects that would help us get to that vision? We've got innovation projects, which are things that nobody's ever done before, or things that we really want to do. And we've had a couple of ideas, but they're going to change the way we do business. So let's put some effort and energy into those sorts of projects as well. We've got new capabilities, so I need a new document management system for different purposes or whatever. And then we've got maintain capability projects. So those are the things that just basically keeping the lights on. If I don't put some energy and effort into maintaining the help desk software, then the help desk software goes away and then we have challenges. So once we have those projects binned, we've got a bunch of teams of people that rate the projects. So what it is we've got strategic alignment that take a look at these projects and we rate whether or not they're falling into the annual plan. So if you've got a great idea and it falls into the annual plan, then that's a higher score. If it doesn't fall into the annual plan this year, then maybe it gets rated a little bit lower and it gets put on hold for something. We got business value. Those are, what is the value going to the business unit? So those are the folks then, those are usually the line managers that are the main people going to be using these sorts of applications or services. We've got a financial component, which is the BAMs, which we call the business account managers. Those are the accountants on the project. Is it feasible to do this? Do we have money? How's it working? Where's the charge number that stuff's coming from? Technical alignment is basically the technology group, the CTO and his organization. Is this, some new technology we've never used before? Has anybody ever used this kind of technology before? How stable is it? And the last one is confidence. And since we're sort of nerds over here, it's the inverse of risk. So it's how confident are you that you can get this thing done? So, and a lot of these sort of things that we've seen, your risk posture, which is, I don't know if I can really get that done. This is the opposite of that. How confident are we that we can get that done? And for the way that we do business, it just seems to work out better. So each one of these projects just get dumped into each one of these bins of compliance, vision, whatever, gets rated on these 5 teams. And then you get a raw score at the end, and that makes up your annual plan. You can get a 1 to N rating.
And then you draw a red line somewhere and say everything above this will do and everything below that we won't.
Basically, yeah. It goes through a couple additional steps moving further on, but yeah.
Right, yeah. And the next step, we're halfway done with the 6 steps. Step number 4, consolidate.
Yeah, this is a pretty standard thing that I think everybody does. We've always tried to explain to people why we try and do the consolidate after the score and prioritize. We basically do it for social reasons, because after this thing gets, these projects get scored and prioritized, it goes through another round where relevant parties and stuff take a look at them and see them. And one of the challenges that we have is, now we have like 3 risk management systems on the system, on the plan. And what we have recognized is if we got 2 requests for a risk management system, as an example, as new efforts, and there's already a risk management system either in full production or it's currently being worked on, we use this consolidate phase to highlight gaps in communication. So as a project manager who's running an existing risk management system, you need to get out to these other people who have asked for risk management systems and let them know what's going on.
Right. Why did you ask for a new project? We're doing this.
Exactly.
Are we not serving you right?
And sometimes it turns into, I know about that guy, but he's not going to be able to do what I want to do. More often than not, it's, I didn't know you guys were working on it. What's going on? And then we put those 2 people in contact. And the guy who puts in the proposal for the third risk management system typically has an idea that he can get a little bit of a budget, maybe a little bit of resources at least to start the project. So when we put that person in contact with the guy who's already got his system sort of in work, oftentimes he'll be able to donate a little bit of resources, a little bit of funds, get them to make changes to the system to suit their needs, and he gets a 80% solution way quicker than it would for him to be able to turn something on from scratch. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why we do that one.
Right. Next step is retreat. So you're going somewhere?
The retreat,
spa up in the mountains?
Yeah, that's where the CIO and all the executive leadership and all the other guys get together with the cloaks and the candles, and nobody else is allowed in, and they got daggers and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, the retreat is not just as it's ceremonial, but we've got an additional set of people that show up at the retreat. The heads of each of the departments, so HR and system engineering and mission assurance and all of these other organizations as well. And then the flight projects also send representatives as well to these retreats. And the intent is that everybody goes through the projects that are on the IT plan. Now, one of the key things that we want to emphasize, at least the way we do business, is don't turn it into, this is what IT needs to get done this year. What happens at this retreat is, because you have all the decision makers in the room at the same time, you say, look, there's a whole mess of IT initiatives and regular flight project initiatives that IT can help you with. This is the way we're going to help you get those done. So you want, broader network so you can download trillions and trillions of data points for SWAT and NISAR. That's fine. We can do that for you. This is how we're going to do that. We're going to upgrade the 10 gig connections to 100 gig. And oh, by the way, if you get the opportunity to help fund some of this, since it's really a project for you, we'll take your money and we'll accept some of your resources, and it'll take less load on the IT resources to then get this project and get everything to you faster. Mm-hmm. So it's really a good socialization effort, as well as give senior leadership, obviously, the last opportunity to go through and, for lack of a better phrase, bless the list of what's going to be on the annual plan.
Okay. The next step after the retreat is, it says here, annual plan. Is that the publication of it?
That's the finalized annual plan. And one of the things that we really try and do when we get to the finalized version of the annual plan is, as a PMO in the details, we know that each one of our projects are ranked from a 1 to N rating. So as an example, if we have 100 projects, there's some project that's ranked number 1, and there's some project that's ranked number 100. When we give this list out and make it available to the wider the wider audience of people, I kind of liken it to knowing what your own IQ is. Some people can handle knowing what their own IQ is, but most people can't. So when you tell this project manager that his project is ranked number 25, but this other project manager is ranked number 27 with his project, they're going to spend time and energy, having fights with each other, trying to get their management to convince them to jockey for position and move up and down in the annual plan. So what we have a tendency to do is we just group stuff into 1/3, 2nd, 3rd, and bottom 3rd. Because if you are in the top 25, you just get, ranked number 1 on the annual plan. And all of those are, I love all my children the same, and they're all treated equally. And then when you get to, rank 2, okay, there's usually a pretty clear demarcation as to the types of projects that make it in the top, that make it in the 2nd, 3rd, and then make it in the bottom 3rd. So we found that when we circulate the finalized annual plan to everybody, putting people in these categories, these bins, putting the projects in there, just for social reasons and political ramifications, is way more palatable. So that's one of the things that we really try and kick out at the end of our annual plan.
It's called an annual plan, and it's supposed to be pretty stable. How stable is it in real life?
We try and revisit our annual plan on a quarterly basis. We've got something we call quarterly reviews. So we provide a system of reporting and analytics to our CIO and executive leadership, where at any point, at any time, they can go with any of their media sort of devices, computers or mobile devices, and take a look at any of the projects in our pipeline. And because they can take a look at any of the projects in our pipeline at any time, they're always doing that reevaluation. Oh, I thought we were done with that. You know what? Why are we still working on that? That's no longer valid anymore. So while we start our plan with, let's say, 100 projects, by the end of the year, Maybe we've taken some things off and we've added some additional things. I like to do a baseline every quarter when I sit down with the CIO and I go, look, we've had 100 projects in the annual plan. By January, we've finished 15. We've got another X amount of work. These are the ones that the PMO thinks may still be questionable. Do you still want to keep these on your annual plan? And we go through that exercise on a quarterly basis, pull things off, add additional walk-in work, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. How well does the whole process work for you?
It's worked fairly well. We've refined it, a little bit over the years. I've been doing this, like I said, I've been at JPL for 15 years. I've been in the project management office for around 7 or so. And in that time, we've certainly, evolved the process a little bit. But this is fairly stable. It hasn't really changed from, these half a dozen phases in the last, 3-4 years. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it's probably the score and prioritize for me specifically, because that really involves getting a lot of information from a lot of different people and trying to, for lack of a better phrase, baseline it. If you're going to measure a bunch of different things in a list, you need to make sure you're evaluating them on the same criteria. So you get people that are very passionate and are lobbying for their efforts because they know we put together the annual plan during the last quarter of the FY. So we're always getting people on our doors going, hey, did you get that email I sent you about this one? And I really want to make sure that gets on the plan. And we say, great, that's fine, thank you. It's a lot of personal management, in that regard. Technically, they're all pretty much the same. It's not that big a technical challenge. It's really the challenges when you have to bring in a lot of people.
I was just going to go there because I have a small company and it's very hard for me to find the time and the commitment to think about, strategy and the future of the business. Yet you not only do it annually, you go through this on a quarterly basis. How is it for you? Getting the people together, getting them in a room, getting their commitment, getting their time. Oh, God, do we have to do this again?
We try and do most of this stuff virtually. JPL has a pretty significant initiative for lack of a better phrase, remote work. So we try and put the tools and services in place to let people, attend meetings from, their office, virtual sessions, from home, on travel, that kind of thing. So it seems to be less and less of an issue as time goes on, honestly. And maybe it's just because people are used to me hitting them over the head with, we got to do it again. Because for the most part, it's the same people, unless you're submitting a new proposal, new initiative, those kinds of things, and you've never been in the process before. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a couple of examples for our listeners of projects that they may have heard of that went through this process?
Well, like I said, most of the stuff that I'm responsible for right now is on the IT side. So it's things like, I know you guys have heard about, the Mars Exploration Rover and, the Mars Science Laboratory and those sorts of rovers and stuff. Our process goes to projects that help that as a larger piece. So most of the audience will probably never hear of all the little things that we put together that makes those sort of grandiose large scale projects possible. But mark my words, they wouldn't be possible if we weren't here.
How do you ensure that everything is still working according to plan? How do you monitor and control things throughout the year?
Well, I think it's in my presentation, actually. There's one old military saying that says no plan survives contact with the enemy. So as soon as we put that plan together, it's already under fire. And people are already saying, I don't like this, and why is that on the plan? And I know you put me in group 1, in group 2, but I really think I need to be in group 1 to make sure stuff gets done. And things pop on and off all the time. So no process is perfect, but I do believe that this is fairly stable with how we do things. And with the way we do business, it works out fairly well.
Okay. So in the meantime, we definitely have one audience member who has sat down and is sitting in the back there listening into our conversation. Once the room is full and the presentation is over, what would you like the audience to take out of this room? What is the number one tidbit takeaway that you would like them to remember tomorrow?
Don't bother making an annual plan unless it's going to change your behavior. The one thing that I've heard quite a bit from a lot of organizations is they spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of resources putting together something that looks nice and, I can show to my CIO and hey, this is what IT is doing or whatever your organization is. And it's this 30-pound document that gets dropped into a drawer and they shut the drawer. And then next year they do the same thing again. And none of the projects that got done were really on the plan. Some of them were, some of them weren't. They don't necessarily go back and look at those baselines. What did we say we were going to do and what did we actually get done? Were there a bunch of projects that got done that weren't on the plan? If so, why? And really do that sort of follow-up. I'm a big believer in you only want to, you're going to do something, you got to do it right. And there should be a reason why you're doing something. So if you're just going to, like I said, not use it to guide your behavior, it's a lot of energy and a lot of effort that is just kind of wasted. Mm-hmm. So that's my tidbit.
Yeah. And what kind of questions do you expect the audience to come up with at the end of the presentation and go, Daryl, I have one more thing I'd like to know? Usually
it's things related to budget, because most of the folks that attend these sorts of conferences that I have had the opportunity to interact with are really for-profit organizations, pharmaceuticals, automotive, whatever the deal is. As an FFRDC, we're really in a bit of a different set of careabouts. And for most for-profit organizations, dollars are right at the top. So it really revolves around dollars and rollover work and canceling projects that are almost done, but maybe you don't need, those kinds of things. Like I said, for most organizations, that's a pretty bitter pill to swallow. For us, we just want to reevaluate, making sure we're not throwing good money after bad. So we're always taking a look at the things we do. And we also try and break up our IT projects into usable phases. So as an example, one of the things that you're going to hear a little bit later on in one of these other presentations is the battle for the clouds. That project to put together the private cloud at JPL was made up of a number of individual little efforts. And if we were to cancel certain parts of those projects, we still have these individual delivered pieces that support flight projects in different areas. So we try and make each of these individual efforts as multi-use as possible. So if something does happen to the larger effort, we can still get a lot of value out of the smaller things that we put out.
Excellent, Daryl. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. You're welcome. I appreciate you having me.